Welcome to Code Breakers. I'm Kim Clements' daughter, Donna. Many of you have reached out to me and asked about the impeachment of Donald Trump and what my dad prophesied about it. Today, I'm going to show you again exactly what God said through my dad on that day, February 22nd, 2014. But before we do that, there are some important and vital things we need to remember about prophecy and the prophetic. God gives us glimpses of the future through the prophets. He's given us that throughout the Bible, the great prophets, major and minor, whose prophecies and visions we are still examining and recognizing the fulfillment of to this day. Prophets who were not always accepted or heard by the people of the day who surrounded them. When they prophesied the things that they did, like Isaiah seeing Christ, Emmanuel, born of a virgin, who was sawn in half with a wooden sword for what he saw by a king of Israel intent on silencing him, it took a very long time for the fulfillment of what he saw to happen, long after he had died. Any threat to the traditions of man and their understanding of God's plan in any age was almost always eliminated. Even the Pharisees, who thought they knew who their Messiah would be, had pictured in their minds and through their studies, did not know him and crucified him when he came to them with the truth. This is the spirit of religion, and it can exist outside of religion too. We witnessed that in the political war that has ensued since the election of Donald Trump in 2016, only a few weeks before my dad died. And you can imagine for me, this is very personal. But God has tasked me with combing through the prophecies over the years and unfolding far beyond what any human being could have predicted. My dad saw what was coming, glimpses of it, too far in the past for he himself to understand fully. But what he did see was that God would take over so that there would be no more corruption in our government. And to do that would take a plan so brilliant, it could only have come from God himself, because no man is capable of fixing this. What we do know is that God has a plan, and regardless of our opinions, especially those based on false information and propaganda fed to us by a media my dad warned us about again and again, a media that is so powerful it can cause Americans to turn on each other based on political party, race, ethnicity, and so on, we see that the true enemy seeks to divide. I have come to see that it's not one prophecy or another that shows us the fullness of what we are facing, but an entire lifetime of small revelations that will eventually culminate into one big picture. One we will speak of for years to come, but we're not there yet, and we're still in the middle of it. And so I choose to wait when it's necessary to wait and to speak only when God instructs me to. It's hard to accept new revelation from God when the information is controlled by a religious spirit. This time and season we are in requires us to trust more in God and less in man's interpretations, because our Creator, who knows the end from the beginning, reveals to us only what we need to know. The reason? Because he gave us a choice. We can choose to stretch our spiritual eyes, if you will, and use the glimpses into the future as a guide, or we can choose to ignore them. The reward is seeing for ourselves, and understanding truly requires something from us. God needs us to see. He cannot force it because he gave us a choice. I've found that no matter how well-intended we can be, we are in God's time, not ours. I have deliberately refrained from speaking about impeachment until the right time. I believe that today is the time to discuss what happened on February 22nd, 2014, and what God was showing us. There is so much that was prophesied that day that to unpack all of it would take some time and patience. So today I will focus only on what was prophesied about impeachment. The first thing we need to look at again is what exactly did my dad prophesy? First, the fact that he saw they will shout impeach, impeach prior to Trump even announcing that he would even run for president is in itself remarkable. But there is more. On that day, my dad prophesied about impeachment twice. Let me play for you what he said about the impeachment the first time on February 22nd, 2014.
They will shout, impeach, impeach, they say, but nay.
Here is what I want you to see. My dad prophesied that they would shout, impeach, impeach. He said the word impeach twice. What we saw happen was the House presented 2 articles of impeachment to the Senate. The reason this stands out to me is because they were shouting about impeachment from the day Donald Trump was elected president, many more times than twice. And it appears that there were certain people who were making plans to try to stop him from becoming president even prior to the election. But in the end, it was 2 articles of impeachment given to the Senate after a rushed and unfair impeachment hearing that did not have a bipartisan vote, with the charges changing as the inquiry progressed. But some very questionable tactics were used. I have many thoughts about what happened there, but for today, we will focus on the fact that my dad specifically said the first time he prophesied it on that day that they would shout, "Impeach, impeach." The very next thing my dad prophesied after saying they would shout, "Impeach, impeach," was, "But nay." That's all. And that is exactly what we have seen happen so far. 2 articles of impeachment were given to the Senate, after which the vote was nay. And Trump was acquitted of the charges against him. What is interesting here, and what we need to pay careful attention to going forward, is that later in the broadcast, my dad prophesied about impeachment again. Watch this.
They will shout, "Impeach, impeach," but this shall not happen.
This time, he said that they would shout, "Impeach, impeach," but that will not happen. Now, I want you to watch this.
If he takes the risk of going to trial and he's convicted, that could be seen as an impeachable offense.
If Trump were caught on a video camera snorting cocaine in the White House, maybe with one of his children, there was at least a chance he'd be impeached.
If he's not a legitimately elected president in your mind, there are tools that Congress has.
I don't see how that wouldn't be an impeachable offense.
That tweet fits the Republican definition of an impeachable offense.
I will fight every day until he is impeached. Impeach 45. Impeach 45.
Grounds for impeachment.
It's an impeachable offense.
Perhaps impeachable offense.
Is impeachment the appropriate remedy?
Something through the Congress like impeachment.
All of that may be impeachable.
That's an impeachable offense.
Is that an impeachable offense?
Is that an impeachable offense to you?
He's much more vulnerable to impeachment.
A potential ingredient of impeachment.
Where do you see an impeachable offense?
It is grounds for impeachment.
Potentially criminal or even impeachable.
Grounds for impeachment, or does that not go far enough in your view?
Grounds for impeachment. This tweet alone may be an impeachable offense.
So let's talk about impeachment.
Impeachment is on the table.
Which impeachable offense?
Bullies don't win. And I said, baby, they don't. Because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach them.
So you see an impeachable set of offenses?
It's an impeachable offense.
If that's not impeachable, I don't know what is.
The president shall be removed from office on impeachment. Is it impeachable?
100% is impeachable.
Very substantial evidence that the president is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors.
Grounds for impeachment.
Tipping point, talk of impeachment reaches a fever pitch on Capitol Hill.
There is no limit on the number of times the Senate can vote to convict or not a president. No limit to the number of times the House can vote to impeach or not a president. So my belief is that the Speaker will probably say we're going to move forward with what we have now, but we're not going to end investigations, and that there may be possible opportunities to do other things at a later time.
As we can see, the Democratic-controlled House has expressed that they intend to continue to investigate Trump and that they can impeach him as many times as they want to. I believe at this stage that they will try to impeach him again, but it won't get nearly as far as it did the first time. I don't sit here before you today saying that this is what will happen, but that is how it appears to me. I also know that God showed my dad in 2007 that Trump would become a trumpet, that so much of what he saw would happen, from the building of the wall to the prayer in the White House, the fact that my dad prophesied extensively about Russia and went boots on the ground to Ukraine, these are all prophecies and prophetic acts that have come to pass in a way none of us could have imagined. Those of us who are watching as all of this unfolds know the outcome, and we also know that God is protecting us and preparing us for something the world has never seen.
Thank you, everyone, and blessings to you. Thank you for joining with us. We also want to thank Donna for working so hard to bring this powerful message, this prophetic message from God to all of us. Really, there's nothing like it in all the earth. We want to give you an opportunity to sow in this unique ministry. And as you do, I know that God is going to uniquely give you a powerful harvest. So let's do so. Let the Lord lead you, and let's get back with Donna right now.
Something that God has shown me through all that we've been through over the past 5 years is that time is of the essence with prophecy, and we don't always have the full understanding until after certain events transpire. But God has given us a gift. The gift is not to show us everything that will happen, but to give us a guide as to what His will is, and that we have the faith to trust Him over anything or anyone else. The fulfillment of prophecy can take years. When my dad saw that Trump would be a trumpet, it was 10 years before he was inaugurated and officially became the President of the United States. We have witnessed the full force of shadow governments, the cabal, whatever you want to call it, come against Trump in an unprecedented and carefully planned and well-armed onslaught that appears to me to be an effort to cover up and conceal a system that has infiltrated our government, our education system, our media, many politicians, our movies and television shows. This plan is decades old, a plan to gain more power and control than any of us could have imagined, to the point that our youth have been manipulated to believe that socialism and communism are the way forward, without truly understanding what that would mean for our country, because they were never properly educated on the destruction and death it has caused in history. The mere presence of Donald Trump in the White House is a deadly threat to that system, because he is an outsider to politics and an unexpected problem for those who have abused our system and corrupted it. And there are players on both sides in both parties, which is why my dad saw on that same day, February 22nd, 2014, that God was dissatisfied with both parties, Republican and Democrat, the left and the right, to which the balance necessary has been tipped too far in the direction of liberalism, but it is not liberating or freeing at all. He also saw a new party would emerge that day, and on other days prior to that. As Christians, we are responsible to recognize the spiritual side of this and remember that Christ told us very clearly that we are fighting principalities and powers. Why do you think my dad would fast and pray as he did, fasting for years at a time, praying daily without fail, and honestly seeking the heart of God so that he could share it with as many people as would hear him? My advice, as the daughter of the prophet who prophesied these things, and a witness to things that cannot be explained away, is watch, wait, fast, pray, and don't rush to judgment. I found a letter that my dad wrote to President Trump, a letter that I don't know has been given to him. I believe that Trump did receive this letter, but I'm not sure. I would like to read that letter to you in closing today. This letter was found in his emails, but I also have found a hard copy of it. And so I'm just going to read to you exactly what he wrote to Donald Trump. And this was in June of 2015. Donald John Trump. Psalm 30, verse 8. Oh my God, be not far from me. You never know how much you really believe in anything until its truth or falsehood becomes a matter of life and death to you. What to deprecate and what to supplicate during your discourse is a matter of life and death for this race that is set before you. When the Lord has given to a man much grace, he will give him more. A little faith is a nest egg. More faith will come to it. But then it must not be seeming faith, but a real and true. A disgrace brought upon America by a threatening, pompous king has quenched the spirit of grace, and yet he searches for a man with the abundance of skill to open the granaries kept locked for such a time as this. Are there any resources left? Oh yes, buried deep in the earth, in the sea, in the skies, and the hearts of true Americans. Napoleon Bonaparte wrote, "Every adversity carries in us a seed of an equal or greater benefit." If we should always rock in the cradle of prosperity, if we were always dandled on the knees of prosperity, if we did not have some stain on the alabaster pillar, if we had not some bitter drops in the wine of this life, we would become intoxicated with pleasure. God ordered this present season of defiance, hatred, conflict, and demoralization to usher in a season of bounty. The river of his bounty is ever flowing, and the wellspring is constantly overflowing. You are not John, you are Joseph. Joseph, who driven from his own to find prosperity through adversity and accusation, was being prepared to be a king. But his ultimate goal was to gather the tribes of Israel around him to deliver them from the oppression of slavery through starvation. Their desire is to starve and isolate my people until they are reliant upon the ostentatious oppressors. God has ordained that the cross of trouble should be engraved on every vessel of honor as the royal insignia distinguishing the king's vessel of honor. They will say of you, he is unsuitable, impertinent, incomprehensible, contrary, unreasonable, unseasonable, unsuitable, irrational, ludicrous, ridiculous, absurd, and baseless. What a perfect choice for the season and time. Run this race, but while you do, cry out more passionately. Come to the cross and lay hold of it, and vow that you will never leave its shadow until you find the blessing that your soul desires for this nation. Do and say what Queen Esther said, I will go in to the king, and if I perish, I perish. I encourage you to add to that the vow of Jacob, I will not let you go until you bless me. Thank you for joining us today for Codebreakers. For all of you who continue to contact me with information, I am eternally grateful and encourage you to keep emailing me at codebreakers@houseofdestiny.org. This is not the last you will hear from me regarding impeachment and everything else that God revealed through my dad on that day in February of 2014. But we also have years and years of prophecy that is intricately connected, and God has given us the job of breaking a code, putting the pieces together ourselves, because in so doing, we find the truth for ourselves without doubt that what we find is the truth. We're in this together. We are the remnant, and the scales are being removed from our eyes so that we can truly see. You can see everything my dad prophesied on February 22nd, 2014 on the Kim Clement YouTube channel. Watch it again, and then contact me and tell me what you see.